George, scenario one, Borghese and Legambi get acquitted. What happens?
They're back out on the streets, and then it's a question of who's in charge. You know, Legambi was the acting boss or the boss. Joey's in Florida. The guys from the Scarfo organization. Does everybody fall in line? I tend to doubt that's going to happen. So I think we don't know what's going to happen, but I think things are going to be different if they all come home.
Okay. Legambi and Borghese go away. They get convicted. What happens?
Then you're left with the Scarfo people who are back now, and I think have a sense of entitlement. They did their time. And you've got the remnants of Joey's organization, but with Joey in Florida. And I think it's less likely for a situation to evolve where there's going to be a problem under that scenario. But you never know. I mean, the stakes are not that high because there isn't that much out there anymore. So if everybody wants a piece of the pie gets smaller and smaller in terms of what your share is. That creates the problem, and that's what the dynamic is.
Let's talk about the old heads a little bit.
Yeah.
That scenario, what scenario puts them at the head of the pack?
Well, you know, if Legambi and Borghese don't come home, and if Joey stays in Florida, then I think you've got a bunch of guys who did their time, have a sense that they're entitled to this, know how the game works, and that, you know, they have status and cred in the streets. And if they want it, I think they're entitled to it in terms of underworld protocol.
But does that bring violence because they're a violent group formerly?
Well, you know, the violence is always there because of their past history. The question is, does anybody want to confront them? And given the status of everybody out there on the streets today, I don't see anybody who wants to be really aggressive. For what? I mean, there's a great line from, I think it's Maria Merlino on the phone one time, says, what are they fighting over? Jail time or coffins? That's what it comes down to, and we've seen that again and again and again with these guys.
But do they sit back and let everybody mess with them? If somebody crosses them, what happens?
Well, it depends on what's at stake. I mean, and if there, you know, and money's being made gambling. There's money to be made in sports betting. There's money to be made in loan sharking. If somebody gets in somebody's face, you might see some problem. But I think that's down the road. I don't think we're going to see any of that now. I mean, I think things are just kind of settling now, and a lot depends on what comes out of this trial.
Okay. In 2 months, we could have a decision, I guess, on which way it goes.
Right.
Talk to me about the timing of when a decision has to be made.
Well, you know, if this trial's over and if they come out, now we're into the new year. You know, there's one of the witnesses apparently is going to get up on the stand and say when Borghese was in prison, what he said was his uncle was just keeping the seat warm. We fought for this. This is ours. Now they come out. Borghese and Legambi come out. Do they get along? Is there a split within that faction? You know, there's a lot of different dynamics, and the personalities involved are somewhat volatile. And that combined with the, I guess, smaller pie in terms of economics, there could be problems. But, you know, that's all hypothetical. If these guys are smart, they'll back off, work something out, everybody make a little bit of money, and nobody wants to go back to jail.
So we don't get the big boom here? I
don't see it. I mean, you like to think that these guys, and I don't know why you would like to think that given the history, but you like to think that these guys, after all these years, have learned that, you know, there isn't a lot to be gained from violence. You end up dead or in jail. And we've seen that again and again and again with this organization, yet there's always somebody who's going to say, you know, you're disrespecting me or whatever. It's so much in flux right now, I don't think we can predict. You know, are the Eagles going to go 3-13 or 8-8? We don't know. What's going to happen with these guys? We don't know.
Talk to me about who surfaces for the Scarfo people that's out on the street now if that happens.
Well, I think the key people in terms of the Scarfo era who are out there, it's got to be the Narducci brothers. Did their time, genuine tough guys. They know this business inside and out. Their father was part of it. I think they have a sense that we belong, and this is ours, and we have a right to it. The question is, do any of the younger people, younger in terms of the guys that are in the 40s and 50s, respect that, or do they get in their face? The other thing is, and you have to remember this, when those guys were out on the street, the Merlino guys were, what are they, teenagers in their late teens?
They carried the
were like
book bags.
Yeah, they were like the JV Mafia back then. Yeah. And I think there is still a lot of animosity toward some of these guys. The younger guys were considered to be somewhat hot-headed and not legitimate in terms of the Narducci punks, in terms of the Narduccis and those guys. You know, they were the real gangsters. And one of the guys who says this apparently is Phil Leonetti, from wherever he is that he's living, looking down on what's going on here in Philadelphia. He says those guys coming out now, the guys that he helped put in jail, are the real gangsters. The question is, does anybody want to act like a gangster and end up dead or in jail, or do they want to go about their lives? That's what remains to be seen.
How much more patience do they have waiting to take over?
You know, I mean, right now we're in the midst of the football season. football season is a big money maker for everybody. If everybody's out there making money, there's no reason to create any problem. By the time this trial is resolved, we'll be coming out of the football season, then we get into kind of a little bit of a lull. I think everybody's going to be patient and see how it plays out. And I guess there has to be a meeting of the minds. And say what you will about Joe Legambi. Legambi established himself as a low-key boss who understood the way things were supposed to work. Now, if he comes back out, does he have the status and the power to tamp everything down and make sure everything works well? Well, in one of the tapes, Joe Licata is saying, keep him in charge because he knows how it works, and he's a good guy. Now, that's the old head talking, the old heads, the guys in their 70s, 60s, and 70s. These other guys, I don't know. I mean, when you're away in prison for 15, 16 years and you come back out and you say, I did my time, where's my peace? That's where problems can develop.
Narducci, Philip Narducci is the name kind of we hear.
Yeah.
A little bit. Why does he deserve a shot at the leadership spot?
Well, you know, I think, again, one, he's got the bloodlines. His dad was a capo before his dad was killed. Two, he did his time, and I think that, at least with the older guys, has some status. And three, I think of all those guys we're talking about, he's the one, personality-wise, who's likely to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, who are you? Here's who I am. From what I know of him, that's his personality. So all of those things factor into, if you want to watch somebody, and again, Leonetti says, if you want to watch somebody, he's the guy to watch.
Can anybody keep all three factions together?
I suppose. I mean, I think, again, maybe we're giving them more credit than they deserve. If they're reasonable, and if there's enough money to be made by everybody, and if a couple of these guys say, I don't want anything to do with this anyway because I don't know where it's going to take me, yeah, there could be a situation. You know, this mob is not what it used to be 20 years ago. I mean, what is it that you want? What are you fighting over? A couple street corners, you know, some book, a little bit of loan sharking? I don't think it's as big as it used to be, so what do you want to risk? And what are you going to gain? That's what it comes down to.
You don't see a throwback to the 80s with all the murders and mayhem and all that came around?
I can't imagine that. I mean, I think these guys are past that in terms. Well, there aren't that many guys anymore. I mean, who's out there? You know, and who's going to do what to whom? I think, I like to think anyway, that wiser heads will prevail. We'll see.
Okay. What happens to Joey Merlino? Does he fade off into the Florida sunset here?
If Joey's smart, Joey will stay in Florida. And from everything I'm being told and from conversations that I had with him, he has no desire to come back up here. But on the other hand, you keep hearing people saying, no, he's coming back, he's coming back. He was up here for, 10 days in the summer, and that created a stir. Joey has a couple problems if he comes back. One, the problem is with law enforcement. And two, the problem is with some of these Scarfo guys who are back out who don't have a very high opinion of Joey. So you got two things that work for Joey. And the third thing is, I think Joey is one of these guys who's realized there's nothing here. And he likes the Florida sun, and it's a good life. I think the only question with Joey is, can he survive economically down there? And if things get tight economically, he may drift back up here, and then we're going to have a problem.
One last word on how much money is out there. We had a case a week ago where the feds raided a sports bookmaking operation in South Philly, and lo and behold, there's 200 grand in cash at that location. That's a phenomenal amount of money to be in one location on a sports book. Kind of tells you there is money still, correct?
I mean, there's no doubt there's money out there, and sports betting always generates money. And the question is, can everybody be satisfied with a piece of that pie, or are they going to fight over it? It always comes down to that. It always comes down to the economics. Sports betting, bookmaking, and loan sharking are the two things that drive the economic wheel. That's where we are.
Anything else you want to add about the impact on this trial may have, or what? What's your thoughts on the outcome of this trial?
You know, I mean, this is an interesting
handicap.
Yeah, I think this is a toss-up. I mean, given the dynamics of what we have here, a retrial, conspiracy charge. Conspiracy charge is in the prosecution's favor. It's a real tough law, favors the prosecution. On the other hand, their witnesses are weak. Monticello was not real strong the last time around. I don't think they're going to call Frankie the Fixer, so the defense may. And now they got this third guy, Anthony Aponic, who brings an awful lot of baggage.
Got booted out, right?
Yeah, the fact that the government's opted to use him now and didn't use him last time indicates this may be a Hail Mary pass. They're desperate to make a conviction in this case. We'll see.
And there's some word that he got booted out of the witness protection program, from what I understand. Maybe even was discussed in court recently.
Yeah, I mean, Aponic he's been in and out, and basically, I think what the defense is going to argue is He's cut a deal twice with the feds. He's not credible. He's lied consistently. And why would you, the jury, believe this guy? On the other hand, and here's the fundamental question with Aponic. Aponic's in jail with Georgie Borghese in West Virginia. He's a New York mob associate. And he may be all the things that the defense is saying he is: a bank robber, convicted, cut deals with the government, did this, did that, abused his wife, anything they want to say about him. But the bottom line is, when he came out of jail in West Virginia, he ended up in South Philadelphia meeting with Lou Monticello. Now, how does that happen?
And how does he know about the Philly mob if he's a New York guy?
Well, the government's going to say he's in jail with Georgie. Georgie and he are working something out. He comes here when he's out to make it happen. Now, the defense is going to deny that, but if the prosecution is smart, sometimes less is more, and you stay focused on that, I think they can build their case. If they try to put too much in there and try to overcome all the baggage he's got, then we could have, like last time, where the jury gets lost, or the jury says, I mean, remember this. Borghese was found not guilty of 13 of the 14 counts he faced. So basically, he won that last trial, and now he's got one count left, this conspiracy thing, and they may be trying to hook it on a less than credible witness. That's where we are.
Is he dangerous if he comes out?
Who, George Borghese?
Yeah. To the organization.
I think there's a lot of people think he's a little bit of a wild card. There's a whole question of how well he and his uncle really get along. And then there's a whole question of, I mean, you talk about the Scarfo guys coming back and saying they're entitled. I think he's going to come back and say he's entitled to this, this, and this. I think there are guys on the streets down here are already worried about that he's going to come back out looking for an envelope from everybody. So all of that comes into play, yeah.